We here at Marvelous Videos have a taste for cosmic horror, and few writers have mastered the genre the way that Stephen King has. One of his most unnerving creations is the concept of the Deadlights, something that those who are familiar with the It universe will know all too well. Once you understand what these things really are, you'll never look at that dancing clown the same way again. Throughout our research, we've uncovered some absolutely mind-bending facts about these entities that fundamentally changed how we perceived its entire mythology. So stick around as we explore 15 crazy facts about the Deadlights and why they might just be the scariest thing King has ever written. Oh, but before we get into the video, we do have a very quick request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
It broke open, and the spirit was set free.
The Deadlights are its true form, not a separate entity. When we talk about Pennywise, we're actually discussing a physical manifestation designed to scare and feed. But the real It? That's the Deadlights. We know that sounds wild, but it's absolutely crucial to understanding the entire mythology. The Deadlights aren't something it possesses or creates, they're literally just Pennywise at its most fundamental level. Maybe it's fair to put it like this. Pennywise is just the finger puppet, while the Deadlights are the hand controlling it. The clown form, the spider, all those terrifying shapes it takes, they're all just masks worn by something far more alien and incomprehensible. In the novel, when the Losers Club eventually gets close to understanding what they're actually fighting, they realize that Pennywise's entire existence depends on maintaining physical form because the true Deadlights would instantly obliterate any human mind that tried to process them directly. The true essence of this creature exists in dimensions that don't operate under the same rules as our reality, which makes defeating it exponentially more complicated than just finding and destroying the clown. The Deadlights appear as swirling orange lights. So what exactly do the Deadlights look like? According to those rare individuals who have actually witnessed them and survived, they appear as a trio of swirling, radiant orange lights. The lights writhe and pulse with an otherworldly intensity that seems to draw victims in like moths to a flame, except instead of burning up, your consciousness gets trapped in an eternal loop of horror. Multiple witnesses describe them as having this quality where they're simultaneously bright and dark at the same time, which shouldn't be physically possible, but somehow isn't surprising when you're dealing with something that exists outside normal reality. The orange color itself seems to carry some kind of psychic weight. It's not just the visual component that damages the mind, but the very existence of seeing that particular hue seems to trigger something primal in human psychology. When Beverly Marsh first sees the Deadlights in the 2017 film adaptation, the scene brilliantly captures this concept through cinematography that makes the orange lights look both beautiful and absolutely terrifying. The way they move suggests intelligence and hunger, as if the lights themselves are aware and deliberately studying the observer. The Deadlights can trap victims' minds in eternal torment. When someone looks directly into the Deadlights, their consciousness gets trapped in what we can only describe as a pocket dimension of suffering. Beverly Marsh experienced this firsthand and spent weeks in a catatonic state, her mind locked in what she later described as frozen eternity filled with screaming souls. The truly insidious part is that victims don't experience this as a quick moment of horror, they experience it as an eternity. What might be a few seconds in our reality feels like centuries of unrelenting agony in the Deadlights dimension. Their bodies are technically alive, but their minds are trapped elsewhere, completely aware but completely powerless. This is actually far more terrifying than simple death because it suggests a form of consciousness that persists even when the body becomes useless, a fate arguably worse than annihilation. Looking into the Deadlights can drive humans to madness or death. The psychological impact of encountering the Deadlights ranges from severe trauma to instant death, depending on how much exposure the victim has and their mental fortitude. When Henry Bowers witnesses the Deadlights after absorbing another victim, his hair literally turns white from shock and terror. Richie Tozier stares into them for just a moment and loses consciousness immediately, his brain essentially shutting down to protect itself from the overwhelming stimulus. Some people don't get the mercy of unconsciousness. Some people's minds just break completely. They survive physically, sure, but mentally they're shattered beyond repair, left babbling about incomprehensible things they witnessed. The horror of the Deadlights isn't just in what they do to you psychologically, it's in the randomness of the outcome. You might look into them and pass out, or you might look into them and spend the rest of your life in an institution unable to articulate the cosmic wrongness you just witnessed. The Deadlights exist outside normal space and time in the macroverse. To understand where the Deadlights truly originate, you need to understand King's concept of the macroverse. The macroverse is essentially the void that contains all of reality. Imagine it as an infinite space where multiple universes exist, each governed by their own rules, all held together by the Dark Tower at the center. Within this cosmic void, there are regions called Todash spaces, which are basically the gaps between universes, areas where reality becomes malleable and dangerous. The Deadlights exist in a location within or beyond the macroverse, a place that doesn't operate under the same physical laws as our reality. Time works differently there, or maybe it doesn't work at all. Distance means nothing. The very concept of existence becomes philosophical rather than physical. When it crash-landed on Earth millions of years ago, the Deadlights didn't come down with it in the traditional sense. Instead, they became anchored to Derry, Maine, existing partially in our reality while most of their true essence remains in the macroverse. That is why they have such incredible power. They're literally a tear or gateway into a dimension of pure, incomprehensible cosmic horror bleeding through into our world. The Deadlights are the true essence of its species, the Glamours. Pennywise is part of a species called the Glamours, ancient cosmic entities that feed on fear and exist outside normal reality. The Glamours are shapeshifters par excellence. They can take any form imaginable, which is why it can appear as a clown, a spider, a werewolf, or literally any nightmare you can conceive. But beneath every glamour is the Deadlights. It's their true form, their essence, the concentrated point where their identity actually exists. Think of the physical forms as avatars that glamours create to interact with lower dimensional beings like us. But the Deadlights are who they really are. The implication here is absolutely staggering because it suggests that somewhere in the macroverse there might be countless other glamours, each with their own Deadlights, each potentially as dangerous as it. Some theories even suggest that it isn't the only glamour that's ever visited Earth. The references to other creatures throughout King's work might be evidence of other glamours that came and went, leaving only fragmentary evidence of their existence. The glamours seem to exist on an evolutionary level, so far above humanity that comparing them is almost meaningless. They view us the way we view bacteria, potential food sources, interesting specimens to observe, but ultimately irrelevant to their existence or survival. Pennywise chose the clown form because it terrifies children most effectively. Now, here's something interesting about why it settled on the clown form specifically. King has actually stated in interviews that Pennywise chose the clown disguise because clowns fundamentally terrify children more than almost anything else in the world. But there's more complexity to this than simple fear exploitation. In the films and novel, there are hints that it might have actually possessed an actual human clown at some point, with the white makeup being literally applied to a human face before it took control. This suggests that it didn't just invent the clown from scratch, it observed it, understood its psychological power, and then either created its own version or corrupted an existing practitioner of the craft. The brilliance of this choice is multifaceted. The fact that it can shift between its clown form and other shapes means it's not locked into one appearance, but the clown form is clearly its preferred method of operation in Derry. Beverly Marsh's vision through the Deadlights showed her the future. One of the most intriguing details that often gets overlooked is that when Beverly witnessed the Deadlights, she didn't just experience cosmic horror, she actually had visions of the future. This experience, which should have destroyed her mind, instead gave her a form of precognition. She saw glimpses of events that would occur, a psychic ability that emerged specifically from her encounter with the Deadlights. This raises a fascinating question about the nature of these entities. Are the Deadlights themselves showing victims the future, or is the glimpse into their dimension so fundamentally outside of normal time that it allows certain minds to perceive temporal flow differently? Some interpretations suggest that the Deadlights exist out of linear time entirely, perceiving past, present, and future simultaneously. If that is true, then witnessing them even briefly might grant a temporary ability to perceive time the way they do. Beverly's resilience likely played a crucial role here. Her childhood experiences fighting her abusive father had forged a kind of psychological strength that allowed her consciousness to remain somewhat anchored during her encounter with the Deadlights. While other victims were completely obliterated mentally, Beverly was able to maintain enough of her identity to integrate the experience and actually benefit from it. This suggests that the Deadlights effect isn't entirely random or universal, it's modulated based on the observer's mental state and willpower. The Ritual of Chud was designed to trap the Deadlights through collective belief. The Ritual of Chud is perhaps the most esoteric and confusing element of the entire It mythology, but it's crucial to understanding how the Deadlights can be combated. This ritual wasn't invented by King's Losers Club, it was an ancient ceremony performed by Native Americans in the Derry area long before the town was established. The ritual works on a principle that seems almost absurd until you understand King's philosophy on the nature of fear and reality, the power of collective belief. When a group of people performs the Ritual of Chud with absolute conviction that it will work, their combined belief becomes a weapon against it. The ritual requires tokens representing each person's connection to their memories of it, which are then burned to summon the Deadlights in a bound form. However, the Native Americans who originally performed this ritual weren't successful. They believed they would succeed, but their belief wasn't quite strong enough, and it slaughtered them all. This detail is crucial because it shows that belief alone isn't enough. You need both belief and the ability to fight back physically and mentally when the ritual fails to fully contain the entity. The Deadlights' power depends entirely on the fear they inspire. Here's the ultimate irony at the heart of its mythology. Despite being cosmically powerful entities, the Deadlights' strength is fundamentally tied to the fear they generate in their victims. It is, at its core, a predator that feeds on fear, and the Deadlights are the vehicle through which this feeding occurs. When people are terrified, absolutely paralyzed with dread, the Deadlights become nearly unstoppable. The entity grows stronger with each victim's terror, and it deliberately cultivates fear through psychological manipulation and violence. But this creates a profound vulnerability. If someone can overcome their fear, if they can face the Deadlights with courage and conviction, the entity actually becomes weaker. This is why the Losers Club was eventually able to triumph. As they grew older and stronger in their resolve, their fear diminished, and they learned to channel their collective willpower against it. The Deadlights can destroy a mind that tries to process them directly, but they're less effective against a mind that refuses to be afraid. This principle is so central to King's work that it appears repeatedly across his universe. The Deadlights have been referenced throughout King's Dark Tower series. The Deadlights don't exist in isolation within King's multiverse. They appear and are mentioned repeatedly throughout the Dark Tower series, particularly in connection with the Crimson King and the mystical forces that govern the tower itself. In the novel Insomnia, the Crimson King uses the Deadlights as a form of mystical power, suggesting that these entities aren't exclusive to it, but are instead fundamental cosmic forces that exist throughout King's multiverse. Some theories propose that the Crimson King doesn't control the Deadlights, but rather harnesses them as weapons, using their reality-warping properties to advance his own agenda of destroying the Dark Tower and plunging all of existence into chaos. The Deadlights appear in certain locations throughout King's expanded universe, acting as weak points in reality where different dimensions bleed into each other. Derry, Maine seems to be one such location, which explains why it chose to settle there. The Dark Tower series reveals that 6 beams hold reality together, each one guarded by supernatural entities called the Guardians of the Beam. Some scholars of King's work theorize that it might actually be one of 6 greater demon elementals serving as a corrupting force opposite the Guardians. The Deadlights selectively choose who they drive mad versus who they leave alive. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Deadlights is that their effect seems to be somewhat modulated. They're not mindlessly destructive forces that destroy everyone equally. Instead, they appear to selectively choose their victims and the severity of their effects. Beverly recovers, Richie loses consciousness but survives, Henry Bowers goes partially insane, Ben Hanscom gets traumatized but remains functional. These varied outcomes suggest that the Deadlights operate with a form of intelligence, or at least some capacity for discrimination. Some victims are deliberately destroyed, their minds completely shattered beyond repair. Others are given just enough exposure to be traumatized but not obliterated. Could it be deliberately varying the effects to maximize the total fear harvested? Maybe those victims who go insane become a different kind of food source for the entity, their continued suffering and fractured psyches generating a constant low-level feed of fear even after physical death. The victims who remain functional might maintain a higher awareness of what they experienced, meaning they generate more intense fear during future encounters with it. This suggests a level of tactical sophistication that makes it even more terrifying than a mindless cosmic horror. The Deadlights potentially represent tears or gateways to other dimensions. Some compelling theories suggest that the Deadlights might actually be tears in the fabric of reality itself, or more specifically, gateways between dimensions. When it crashed to Earth, it didn't necessarily bring the Deadlights with it in the conventional sense. Instead, the impact created permanent ruptures in reality, and the Deadlights are what bleeds through those ruptures. This would explain why they appear as writhing, pulsating lights rather than a fixed, solid form. They're not fully in our dimension. They exist partially in our world and partially in the space beyond. When someone looks into the Deadlights, they're actually seeing into that dimension, and their mind breaks because it's trying to process information from a space that doesn't operate under normal physical laws. This theory gains support from King's concept of thinnies throughout his work, locations where the barrier between worlds has worn thin, allowing strange phenomena to occur. Derry might not just be home to it might be built on top of a fundamental weak point in reality. If this is true, then the Deadlights might be far older than it itself. They might predate the creature, and it simply found them and learned to use them as a vehicle for its consciousness. The Deadlights might be unkillable, and its defeat may have only been partial. Here's the most unsettling implication of all the evidence we've examined. The Deadlights might actually be unkillable. When the Losers Club defeated Pennywise in both the novel and the films, they destroyed the physical manifestation of it. But the Deadlights, the true form, the core essence, those might have remained entirely unharmed. The true it, existing in the Macroverse, was potentially never even directly threatened. What the Losers killed was essentially an avatar, a projection of its consciousness into our dimension. Imagine if someone destroyed your phone but you were still alive in your house. That's roughly what happened. There are hints throughout King's expanded works that support this theory. In Dreamcatcher, there's graffiti that reads "Pennywise lives," suggesting that it never truly died. The Crimson King's use of Deadlights in other King novels implies that these entities continue to exist and function independent of Pennywise's status. Some interpretations suggest that it is deliberately choosing not to fully manifest in our dimension because doing so would require expending energy that would weaken its connection to the Macroverse, making it vulnerable to other cosmic forces. The Deadlights might be playing a longer game than we realize, with its periodic feeding cycles being part of a much grander scheme that spans across King's entire multiverse. Marvelous verdict! Maybe there is more to understand. These entities are far more complex and terrifying than most people realize, representing not just a monster, but a fundamental force of cosmic horror woven throughout King's expanded mythology. The Deadlights exist outside our normal comprehension, feeding on our fear and serving as the true core of an entity that can take any shape imaginable. Whether they're unkillable cosmic forces, tears in reality itself, or something even more incomprehensible, one thing is certain. The Deadlights are among the scariest concepts King has ever created, and they deserve way more attention than they usually get. Let us know in the comments which facts surprised you the most, or if you have your own theories about what the Deadlights truly are. While you're down there, if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.